Hi, welcome to Board Gems. In this video, I'll be comparing the two English editions of On the Underground. Here we can see the two editions. On the bottom is the 2006 edition, originally from the British publisher JKLM Games. And on the top, the more recent, I think 2019 edition from Finnish publisher LudiCreations. On the Underground 2019 edition is in a fairly standard sized square box, and the JKLM edition is narrower. It's approximately around about the same size as something like Agricola in terms of profile, maybe a little bit smaller, but definitely a lot narrower. Looking at the backs of the box, you can see the original edition has this fairly standard looking blurb on the back of the 2006 edition, showing the board and some cards and a bit of text. And you'll notice the newer edition, this is actually the bottom of the box, because this edition has a double-sided map, one for London, one for Berlin. And so LudiCreations had a double-sided box. One side shows London, one side, this side, shows Berlin. And actually the details of the game were actually printed on the side. A bit unusual. Looking inside, the original edition had a very simple paper insert. The new edition has no insert. You can see the components are all loose. And I didn't show it, but there's some nice artwork on the inside of the box. Not much to say about the rule books. I must say I'm not a fan of square rules. It just takes up a lot of space when you have it open. I understand for some reason publishers think that these days you have to have a square box for some reason. Okay, but you don't have to have a square rule book. Anyway, I find the new rule book quite clear. The old rule book can be a little bit confusing on a first pass, but the game is simple enough. Looking at some of the track pieces, most of the tracks are similar in color. These are the only ones that look a little bit different. The white, which is pure white in the new edition, and the old edition is half white, but also kind of a half natural wood color. But they're the same size mostly. Here we see on the top the destination tokens, and on the bottom the branch tokens. Old edition on the left, new edition on the right. Edition on the left has wooden discs with stickers, and on the right they are cardboard tokens. And it's exactly the same situation for the score markers and the start player marker, which is on the bottom there, but all the other markers are score markers. You see, you use different score markers based on the number of players, because one score marker represents 2 to 4 different colored tracks that player uses. Wooden discs with stickers in the old edition. In the newer edition, cardboard tokens. I am not a fan of cardboard tokens for use in scoring. I don't mind cardboard tokens. I even don't mind cardboard standees in place of miniatures in a lot of situations. But I'm not a fan of cardboard tokens for use on score tracks. Give me wooden markers. I think I read somewhere that LudiCreations did not want to use stickers. It went against everything they stood for, or something, I don't know. In the foreground is the wooden passenger pawn. It's quite large in the old edition, smaller but no less useful in the newer edition. And in the background you'll see the markers that you use to mark the 4 active destinations the passenger may travel to. There's 4 in the old edition, but sometimes they'll be kind of white or gray destinations, and sometimes they'll be yellow or gold destinations. And it's handy to be able to look on the board and see, okay, this is a yellow destination versus a white destination. So for my old edition, I ended up taking a yellow sticker and putting it on one end of the cylinder. That's sort of a hack you have to do yourself. And in the new edition, instead, they just gave you a whole complete set of both white and yellow markers. Feels completely unnecessary, but better than not having it. Having a look at the cards, the old edition, I find the map is quite clear in terms of where the name station is on the whole board. And it might just be me, but I find the moving tag, you'll see like for the 2 destinations on the right, the tags are in kind of different locations because they're showing where the station is. And I don't know, I feel that's a little less clear, but I know it's all in my head. Certainly the ones on the right look nicer. Now the boards are massive, so I can't really show them both at the same time. Here's the new one. You can see that the lines connecting the stations, which are the circles on the map, look like sort of artistic brush strokes. So if you look at that and you compare with the old edition, where instead they have rectangular spaces on which you place the tracks. The brushstroke art style is quite nice. If you look at the different stations on the board, you'll see that some of them have just one stroke connecting two stations, sometimes it's 2 or 3, and sometimes there's even 5. But once you have a couple of tracks on there, it's hard to see how many there are supposed to be, because the tracks are not the same width as the brush strokes. So it just kind of all gets muddled. And you can see that the old edition has spaces for the tracks, and the spaces are pretty much the right size to hold a track. So assuming you put the tracks on the spaces properly, it's very clear always where there are spaces free to put new tracks. This is the old board, and it's actually sitting on top of the new board. So you can see on the top left and top right that the new board is a little bit longer, but slightly less wide. It's important to note that the board has actually changed. You'll see in the circled areas, you can see that for one thing, one of the terminus stations have been removed, and also you'll see that one of the bridges has been removed, but some of the other lanes are noticeably wider, and that's actually a welcome change. I found in the old edition, once you started working in this eastern area of the map, you really had to focus on it and try not to get distracted by anything else happening elsewhere on the board, because it's so easy to get blocked with all these one-track wide lanes. They're widened enough that now you can work on that, but you can jump and do something else and not worry as much about being blocked. So I like the change. The old board has a very large infographic in one corner showing the summary of how players score points. It's a little cardboard one that I've placed on the board for the new edition in this shot. But I also want to point out the score track. You can see on the old board that the spaces on the score track are very clearly separated by lines. And that's not the case in the new edition. And in fact, a lot of the numbers are just really faded. And certainly an artistic choice, I find it's a little less usable, but only a little bit. And certainly the publisher, and for people who appreciate a nice looking game, probably that very slight decrease in usability is more than made up for just good vibes looking at a cool thing. Of course, there is another selling point for the new edition, and that is there's a whole other board. What's actually the back of the London board shows a completely different map. This one's for Berlin. I've not played this, but isn't it great that it has 2 maps right out of the box? That is probably the biggest selling point for the new edition. Thanks for watching. Remember, older games like On the Underground don't stop being good just because newer games come out. Take care.